Hi again, it's Kathleen Littleton with Cross Stitch Antiques. I haven't been here to see you since March when I was releasing my 12 new Nashville market releases. So here we are in August and the time has flown by. Let me just say one thing about Nashville. I often do have some PDF files available of my new releases, but in order to allow the shops to have first availability to encourage people to shop at your local needlework store, I prefer to wait to release my PDFs for 4 months after I release them to the shops. So they are now available on my website at the PDF page. If you'd like to download those are available to you now. So what have I been doing since March, for almost 5 months ago? Well, as usual, I've been stitching and reproducing and collecting historic antique samplers. So let me just begin chronologically. Since March, I've been stitching on some models. I was working very hard on a couple of them. I had a big event coming up in May, which I was finally able to host and be a part of at Hobby House, and it was called Sampler Schools. It was a workshop hosted by David and Kathy Mills at Hobby House in upstate New York, and I was delighted to finally get there to present three very, very beautiful, if I say so myself, historic samplers. Now, these will be exclusive to Hobby House for about a year, and they will be offering them soon on their website. They're waiting to just get some more supplies for the kits. But we had a lovely attendance there in May, and let me just tell you a little bit about those projects. So this was the booklet that all the attendees received, and the workshop was called Sampler Schools. I highlighted 3 samplers from my collection. One was from Eckworth, one was from Westtown, and one was from the Bristol orphanages. And in this little booklet, which I usually produce for the attendees at my workshops, are full color photographs of research I've done that the attendees get to take home with them as a reference for them for further information or to read more about the presentation and the references I cited. So let me show you those, and they will be available, like I said, in about a year from May, but also exclusive to Hobby House when they're able to get those up on their website. So the first one I'd like to show you is the Westtown Quaker Sampler. And here we have the antique of the model I'm going to show you in a minute. The antique being, sorry, I just have a lot of samplers that are falling. This one, Sarah Hughes. You can see many of the recognizable Quaker motifs in the florals. This half medallion appears, again, I'll show you on the Eckworth sampler, the paired birds, and the religious verse. Now, this one was really wonderful find because the antique actually had provenance written, handwritten on the back by a descendant. And she was providing much of the information that gave me a good starting point in researching Sarah Hughes. And her brother both attended Westtown School, and they are recorded in their annals of registered pupils. So let me show you the model. Here we have the beautiful model. This was actually one of the first models that I did not stitch myself because I had to produce 3 models in a very short period of time. So this was actually beautifully stitched in record time by Kathy Krause. And I thank her so much for doing this. It's just really exquisite. So here we have the beautiful model of Sarah Hughes, a Westtown Quaker sampler, and the antique. Now, bear with me a moment because I'm going to just set these down safely and show you the next one. So her chart looks like this, and we have lots of information about the Westtown Quaker School. As I gave my presentation, a lot of the information is included in the booklet, and it's stitched with mostly cross stitch. We have some beautiful queen stitches along the border, which are also changed to cross stitch if you prefer to do cross stitch in your borders. And it was stitched on 40 count antique button by Mason Linen with a Veriswa 103 silks. Okay, so that's one of the three from the sampler schools. The second one is just obviously just one of my most favorite in my collection at this time. It's obvious to me because if any of you have been to any of my lectures before, you know I'm a Quaker lover, not just Westtown Quakers, but I love Ackworth Quakers, I love Irish Quakers. I just think they're very, very beautiful, and my eyes and my heart are really drawn to them. So I was delighted to obtain Mary Colby, which is a polychrome medallion Quaker sampler from Ackworth about a year or two ago, and I got it for a great price because you can see how the red here at the bottom has started to disintegrate and bleed into the linen fabric. So it was actually very, very inexpensive find, and it doesn't happen very often. But you can see there is a motif here that is also shared on the beautiful Westtown Quaker I just showed you. And it's in the border, the half medallion border. And I'm just trying to locate where it is here on backwards. So it is somewhere on here, but it does share the same. And when I see that, I will point that out to you. Oh, it's blended in. It's actually on the side here because it's in the faded off-white color. So that is the shared medallion, a half medallion with the Westtown Quaker. But again, you can see many of those Quaker motifs. And there we have, this one is Mary Colby. She's the antique. And then we do have my model, which I stitched myself. And this is really what I spent a lot of my time on from March until mid-April, stitching this, which turned out very beautifully. So here we have Mary Colby Ackworth, and she is just gorgeous, if I say so myself. And here's that shared medallion I was just referring to, which you can see a little bit better on this reproduction. Now this one here was stitched on 46 count antique button, medium light by Mason Linen, using 103 silks. And it turned out pretty well. And you can see this red motif, that's how it looks without the bleeding. What's beautiful about this is, and I wasn't even sure I was going to tackle them, are each of the letters in the alphabet, as they're dispersed throughout, are done in 16 leg Algerian eyelets. So I was going to fudge that a little bit and do either Smyrna crosses or even 8-legged, but once I tried it, I was like, this is wonderful. And it just takes time and patience, as does anything in stitching. And I wanted it to look as authentically beautiful as the antique. So I gave myself that challenge and I accomplished my mission. So all those 16-leg alphabets done in Algerian eyelet were actually not so bad at all. Just one stitch at a time. There you go. And her booklet looks like this. Mary Colby, Ackworth School, 1803. There are 15 different shades of beautiful silks in this. And I hope you think it's as beautiful as I do. It's a real treasure to stitch something so historic. So the third one was a Bristol Orphanage sampler, which some of you might be already familiar with, Amelia Fox. She has been in my collection since, I believe, 2022, and she was briefly available at the Attic during Bristol 2 weekend, which was a couple years ago. And Amelia Fox is a very large Bristol sampler, and she is right here for you to look at. And down at the bottom, you'll see has been stitched very carefully with the words Ashley Down, Bristol, and the orphan house number as well as her name. And there is lots of provenance available on Amelia and her siblings, which is all included in the booklet, the chart. So I did a lecture on Bristol samplers as part of the Hobby House workshop, as well as these other two schools. Just as a side note, while I'm looking at it, what I've tried to do more recently, there's been a lot of conversation about personalizing your samplers so you know that it's yours, and 100 years from now, people won't think that what you stitched in 2024 is actually an antique, but actually your model, your stitched reproduction. So some of my models I don't stitch my name on, but I do try to authenticate them for posterity's sake by including some kind of documentation on the back. So you can get these little pocket folders from Amazon, and because I'm a designer, I like to include my chart in the pocket, as well as information about a little bit about when I acquired it or when I stitched it on the folder itself. So, and then it's securely taped onto the back of the sampler. This one being the antique, for your reference, I usually also try to include it on any stitched models that I have done. So, okay. And then in terms of the Bristol Orphanage Sampler, Amelia Fox, here's her booklet. And she is chock full of provenance, many pages about Amelia and the Bristol Orphanage. It appears in the beginning, and the full chart is also there for you. And this also will be available from Hobby House as an exclusive for about a year, and then released to the public probably in the spring of 2025. Okay, so you've been wondering what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing in terms of the month of April. Then we had, I had a wonderful opportunity to be on a lovely cruise. Now, in March, I met Jean Farish, and she was kind enough to let me know that there was an opening on her British Isles cruise, which was to be held this past June. So I asked my husband, given that it was a very special week for me, that the ship was sailing, it being a very big birthday, if we could possibly, take her up on that opening. And he said, yes, let's do it. So we were also very blessed to go together with our daughter on one of Jean Farish's Stitcher's Escapes cruises to the British Isles. So in honor of that event, I wanted to produce a commemoration of the trip for myself to remember the places we went. So this is the band sampler that I produced, and let me get something white here. This is called the British Isles Band Sampler. And I hope you can see. So what we have here is motifs from 5 antique samplers in my collection, and they document the 5 places the cruise went. So we went to Ireland, and here's a band from my Irish sampler, the Elizabeth Martin Mount Mellick Quaker sampler that has been released on my website since 2021. Here we have one from Guernsey, which is in the Channel Islands, and below that is the word Guernsey, and that was just a phenomenal place to visit. We saw the tapestry there. We saw, all the beautiful places that you might have seen depicted in the movie, the Literary Potato Peel Pie Society book and movie, as well as going to the Occupation Museum, which was very historic and well documented. And I'll mention Guernsey in a moment. And then we have Wales, and here's a band from my Wales called Holyhead Sampler, Sarah Williams, which has also been released since 2021. Then the year, which was 2024. This here are motifs from one of my Scottish samplers. They also have the initials of myself, my husband, and our daughter that went with me. And then the last one is England, and this one motif is from my Annie Matilda Moss from Daglingworth School in England. So there you have it, British Isles band sampler. This was available only for the month of June, ending in July, for the attendees who traveled on the cruise ship. So that's what was also keeping me busy there. And let me just set this down a sec. Speaking of Guernsey, some of you might be in the Country Sampler Schoolgirl Club. I was honored about a year ago to be part of that, and my release is coming, or will be coming, or has come to you in the past couple weeks, and they're still shipping those out. So I won't tell you too much about it if you'd like to be surprised, but it is a Guernsey sampler. It was in Jean's newsletter, a short little small picture of it, but this is another one very dear to my heart, and I'd like to show you at least the colors. And we stitched it all in the over-dyed cotton threads, and here we have the colors used. There's, oh goodness, I think the girls up at Country Sampler said they've never had so many thread colors in one of their club releases before. I believe there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's over 24 different colors. So this one, I was actually honored to see in the production of them putting their kits together, because I just got back from a visit up to Country Sampler about 2 weeks ago. So it was just a thrill to see how they actually put their kits together with such meticulous care, and package the linen and the threads. So for those of you who are in the club, and I believe there are still openings, you will be able to get yours very, very soon. And just, if you don't want to see what it looks like, close your eyes for a second, but here is the chart. And this is the beautiful Julia Della Mare, a Guernsey Channel Island sampler, just filled with blossoming flowers. And the piece of the border is what I use for the motif on the British Isles sampler. So if you're not in Jean's club yet, go to the Country Sampler website, and maybe you can still get one of these. And there still is one more release for this year, and then it recurs again next year. So please sign up if you'd like. Okay, so that's another project I've been working on since you've seen me last. Now, speaking of the cruise, I do want to share with you some new antique samplers that I have acquired from my collection. And I'm going to point out them in random order just because where they're sitting. So part of that cruise was just a delight to be on it, first of all, because of the beautiful places we went. But there were just a great group of ladies who were stitchers who came along with their spouses, and there were a number of other designers. So that was just a pleasure as well to get to know some of the designers in that kind of a setting. And before we even sailed, we had the opportunity to go to a lecture by Jacob de Graaf of Modern Folk Embroidery. I must say that I don't watch a lot of floss tubes because I'm, busy. I run a shop, I have a large family, I design, I do a bunch of other things, but occasionally I do, and I have once or twice listened to him, and I've been part of their Advent box from Evertote, which I believe was one of his designs, and I just really think very highly of his knowledge and his history. And being in Amsterdam is where the ship sailed from, so it was near to where he lives in Rotterdam. So he came over and gave a talk to a handful of us, which was just very nice small group of people, and he opened it up to question and answers. At that point, I did show him a picture of one of my new acquisitions, which I had just obtained about a couple weeks before, and he did indicate that this is a Friesland sampler. And there you have my Friesland sampler, which I will eventually, God willing, get to reproduce and put out there for your sakes to also stitch. So one of our stops then on the British Isles cruise was a first stop being Amsterdam, and here's a sampler from that neck of the woods, being in the Netherlands, a Friesland sampler, which is so beautiful. And what I love researching, so I'm going to read a lot, of information that Jacob himself has put out there, just so I can gain some knowledge on these samplers, learn a little bit more about the lettering, the style, the motifs, and that way when I'm reproducing it, I can understand more about the stitcher who actually made the originals. And that's part of why I love samplers so much, is delving into the past and a person's life from the past. So it really, really intrigues me. So we also went to Scotland, and I do have a somewhat recent acquisition from Scotland. We actually went to 3 different places in Scotland. We went to Inverness, we went to Edinburgh, and we went to Glasgow. So here's one of the samplers that I've collected, and this one is really damaged in the back, so let me hold something against this, maybe you can see it better. Okay, this is a gorgeous old antique sampler from Scotland, and it's very dark. I hope you can see how beautiful it is, but you can see many of the traditional Scottish motifs on here. I also had the pleasure of visiting Culloden Moor, which was very sad, but it was a pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to go there. And I viewed some of the samplers there, and since then have been able to obtain from Amy Mitten's collection a Scottish sampler that depicts symbols from that battle that was held there on that moor in the 1700s. So there's so much Scottish history available, and I am an Outlander fan. So that's another keepsake I have from my trip, is I went online and purchased Amy Mitten's sampler depicting aspects of that battle on Culloden Moor. Okay, so that's one of my Scottish samplers in my collection, not yet reproduced. Another beautiful Scottish sampler that I have acquired recently, which I have charted and will soon be able to stitch the model, is this beautiful sampler. It's all monochrome, and it's from Edinburgh, however you'd like to say. So I love lettering. I love the alphabets. I love the verse on this. It has the beautiful Jesus Permit verse, which you can see. I'm sorry about the lighting, but these are the antiques you're looking at. And sorry for the reflection there. This one has the crowns with the initials underneath, and it was stitched by a young girl named Anne Phillip, age 9. So she's been all charted. I'll be getting ready to stitch the model soon, and hopefully she'll be out sometime this coming year. So the fact that we went to 3 excursions in Scotland, there was 2 samplers. I'm not saying I bought all these on the trip. Those I've had in my collection previously. But this one I did purchase while on the cruise from an auction site and had it shipped home. And this one's from Glasgow, Scotland. And I think she's very pretty. And she says, "Let Glasgow flourish." And again, you see those crowns with the initials underneath. They usually memorialize family members, and if they're done in black, it means that person had passed away by the time the stitcher was stitching her sampler. You can see this motif here with the flowers, the drooping flowers in the vase. Very common on Scottish samplers, as well as this border. So this was stitched by Susan Murray, Murray being a great Scottish name. All right, so there you go. Those are 3 Scottish samplers, and those will be coming out sometime soon. Soon being relatively speaking. Just a couple other things while I'm thinking of it is I wanted to show you a couple other random antiques that I've collected. This one being a little tiny one that I can't wait to reproduce. And just a spot motif. And there's no name on here, just full of little angels and birds and vases and lions. It kind of gives me a Scottish feel to it, but some of the motifs with the crowns, symbols that look familiar to me from other samplers. And I'm going to try to do a little bit more research, but this one would be quick to chart up and get out there for you. So hopefully this fall, our youngest child is going off to college. It's been 38 years since we first had children under the roof, our oldest daughter being 38 and many children in between, and now our youngest going off to college. So I hopefully will have more time on my hands to keep me from going into a sad stupor of time has passed and now my kids are all out of the house sensation. So I'll keep myself busy though. I have a lot to occupy my heart. And that one is one I'd like to get done soon this fall. All right, so what else? Okay, now getting to probably the last thing I'd like to talk about is a new release. And this is coming out at the August Needlework Marketplace, which is an online event for shops to purchase new releases from many designers. I did it last year as well. It's very well run. And what I'm going to talk to you about now is that release itself. So her name is Sarah Holcomb Anderson, and she is a prequel to the Carter House Sampler. If those of you are familiar with the Battle of Franklin in Franklin, Tennessee, which was held in 1864, one of the last battles of the Civil War, and you can visit the historic home of the Carter House, where the battle actually took place on their front lawn, as well as around the town itself. So there was a beautiful sampler that the owner of this home, his name is Fountain Branch Carter. His wife stitched a sampler in 1817, which I released, called the Carter House Sampler, and there you see it. And I'll show you my model in a second. Now this one is actually Fountain Branch Carter's mother. So this one is Fountain Branch Carter's wife, who stitched this sampler in 1817. And this new release, which was recently acquired by the Battle of Franklin Trust, and they contacted me to see if I would reproduce it as well to benefit the battlefield and the Civil War sites they are trying to manage and acquire. And I was delighted that they reached out to me. So this has been under wraps for several months, and I've stitched the model again since March. And here we have the antique, and this is my model. And Sarah Holcomb Anderson stitched her sampler in 1789. So you'll find a lot of provenance on this. Those of you who have the others, which was the Carter House Sampler, and also Catherine Morgan, which is from the Carnton Plantation. And this would be the third in that series. So let me show you what she looks like. And here we have my model, which I stitched myself. It's stitched on needle and flax Hemingway. And it's a beautiful band sampler. There's over ones in the verse, and there's Algerian eyelets, which are, I believe, eight-legged Algerian eyelets. And very beautiful colors. There's pops of yellow and pops of pretty green and golds. And Hemingway is just a very lovely color. It's very similar to Vintage Meadow Rue by Lakeside, which I was tempted to use, but I know it's hard to get a hold of. And it was stitched with DMC. So again, the proceeds from the sale of this go directly to benefit the Battle of Franklin Trust, as does the Carter House Sampler and the Carnton Plantation Sampler. So, and there are only, I believe, 9 colors used throughout. So if you're interested in this, it will be released through your local needlework shops. So contact them directly and at the Battle of Franklin Trust, and eventually it will be up on my website as purchase as well. Okay, so that's my August release. And while we're talking about Tennessee samplers, many of you might know that there's been a book in the works by Tennessee Sampler Survey, I believe many years now, and it's finally available for pre-order. So if you Google Tennessee Sampler Society, Tennessee Sampler Survey, I'm sure you will find a link to their upcoming book that's being available in February of 2025, but you can pre-order it now. And on the on that web page is the depiction of what we call the little dog sampler. This is a series of samplers stitched in Tennessee, well documented by the Tennessee Sampler Society. This is my reproduction of one of those little dog. They're called that. That's their nickname because usually they have a little dog, black dog. This one does not have that dog, but it's still exactly the same format with the house and this motif and the border. This one was actually in the collection of Mr. Rick Warwick, who is the historian connected with the Heritage Foundation of Williamson County, Tennessee. He gave me exclusive permission to reproduce this, and the sales of this chart go directly to the Heritage Foundation. This has been up on my website since 2020. So if you love Tennessee samplers, besides the Carter House and the Carnton one I just showed you, this is another one in my collection that also benefits the Tennessee History Foundation down there. All right, and then just a quick review. This is the Carter House sampler itself. This is my model. This is stitched on 28 count, vintage metal rue, very similar, like I said, to the Hemingway. So you can see these would look lovely hung together. The Hemingway by Needle and Flax and the vintage metal rue. So you can do a whole series of Tennessee samplers if you like. And then the last one here being the Catherine Morgan, which I'm going to hold up for a second. This one also was stitched in Franklin, Tennessee. And this one occasionally hangs in the Carnton plantation down there. And this too benefits the Battle of Franklin Trust. This has been on my website since I believe 2020 as well. So, okay, we covered a number of things. We covered what I've been doing since March, my Hobby House Needlework Sampler Schools event, the stitching of a sampler for the Country Sampler Schoolgirl Club, the Guernsey Sampler, which if you're in the club, it should be getting to you soon if it hasn't yet already. We talked about my British Isles cruise and some of the beautiful antiques from those beautiful countries, as well as my British Isles sampler, the band sampler that I stitched to commemorate that trip, which you might see in the future as an available release. And we talked about my upcoming release in August for the online needlework marketplace. So what else do I have going on? A lot. I have a lot going on in the future. I'm delighted to say I'm going to be part of the faculty at the Addicts January Sampler Symposium. I'll be teaching with Nicola Parkman again, as I did last year. We're doing a joint lecture on a topic that you will soon find out about. So I'm working on projects for that. And I will be attending the Great British Sampler Weekend Comes to America this coming October. So looking forward to speaking briefly about Irish samplers and having a project available to the attendees as well. And I am attending in September, just next month, Needlework Galleria in St. Charles, Missouri, which is a retail consumer show, and it's held at the Embassy Suites down there. So I'll have a full shebang of charts, kits, menu with lakeside linen and silks and everything available for sale, right to the consumer, cash and carry. And if you're interested in attending that, you can reach out to Needlework Galleria 2024. It's put on by Kathy from the Inspired Needle Shop. So there's a lot of other things up my sleeves I can't really talk about yet, but I've been busy girl, and it's delightful to reconnect with you all. And I thank you so much for your interest in my samplers, again, cross-stitch antiques. many of which are available on my website or will be forthcoming. And I just invite you to stitch antiques. And in the meantime, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. And thank you again. God bless. Bye now.